Yeah, you might have more background on this blacklist than I do because I wasn't. I had heard of this actually from a client a while ago and didn't look into it because I'm not a member of a lot of these Facebook groups where apparently these were being shared. And there's two lists. One has like thousands of people. One has shorter.
Yes.
One of them's like based in Amherst or something.
Yes, one's based out of Amherst.
Yeah.
And so there's two lists. I actually forgot to write down the names of the companies, so I'm just looking up right now. But yeah, so there's two lists. One has a couple hundred people. The other has 3,200 names. Mm-hmm. So the Amherst Landlords Association is the one that has about 3,000 names. And then there's a local.
Are there even 3,000 people in Amherst?
Yeah, I think it started in Amherst and then pooled out to the rest of Nova Scotia.
Gotcha, that tracks.
The miracle of the internet and Facebook.
Yeah.
And then the other one, the Nova Scotia chapter of Acorn, has a do not rent list that has 256 tenants.
They don't have the list. They got the list. Acorn
they got
is
the
an
list.
advocacy group. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But they found the list, and it was 256 names, and that's based out of Halifax.
And I think they essentially anonymously joined these pages, interacted, and eventually got their hands on these lists.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, quick background. These are two Facebook groups. They have these lists, and basically landlords, private landlords, have been submitting names of tenants that are doing things, whether it be mispaid rent, damaged units, anti-landlord.
Commenting online. I saw that. That's
online.
a little dicey. That's a
very dicey
can of worms,
one.
Yep.
And just basically that kind of stuff that basically is that's poor for another landlord to have to deal with. And so they're putting their name up there. I don't think they're giving up any like real detailed information, but basically they're sharing their experiences with that person and saying maybe you shouldn't rent to them. But yeah,
I think the issue was, this whole concern around doxing and putting someone's information out there and maybe creating a prejudice or a bias against an individual. That this is the obvious concern with it. I see both sides of this one, Neal.
The same.
First question:
Yeah.
Do you have the list?
I don't.
Yeah, neither do I.
Nah. I tried to join.
I was like, my first thing, I was like, do I press like following for the list? I'm kind of curious to see it. That's human nature.
I would like to see the list.
Yeah.
I tried to join a group to see the list, and I never got accepted. That was almost actually last week. But I think that's with everything going on, they might not be accepting new people because there's some risk on who's joining really quick here right now.
The Amherst Landlord Facebook group is like, why are we seeing all this renewed traffic? Yeah, I mean, I see both sides of it.
I'll let you go. Go ahead.
That was it. No.
Okay.
So I obviously put myself in the position of a landlord where we as landlords rely on often the reference of a previous landlord.
Yes.
It's in there in most applications.
Yes.
Please provide the contact information for your previous landlord. I get those calls all the time.
Yep.
And I've made those calls all the time. I'm sure you have the same.
Yeah.
So a landlord reference is nothing new.
Yep.
The difference is it usually is voluntarily provided by the tenant.
Yes.
And when they can't provide one, obviously you start to get nervous as a landlord. Like, what is this issue you had with your previous landlord? Rightly or wrongly, sometimes you're concerned with that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I guess going specifically, so with that being said, then would you, if you had access to a list, would you just do a quick name check?
I mean, I guess if I had the list in front of me and it was alphabetized and I was like, okay, last name this, I'll check it out for sure. I think anyone who's going to be able to, holier than thou, no, I would. That's like saying I also wouldn't call their references. Of course I'm going to call their references, right? Like, of course I'm going to check these things, but I'm not going to go out of my way to make that list or seek out that list. I'm saying, like, literally, if you had it in front of me here, I would be curious to check it, and I would probably recognize a couple names on it. But I wouldn't go out of my way. I mean, I've got my own vetting process that I feel good about, and knock on wood, I'm probably a few hundred tenants in now. And the only times I've been burned, it's been like my own foolishness. Except in one case, I got a positive recommendation from a landlord who was clearly just removing a problem tenant from his building and sticking them to me. Clearly.
Yeah. I've thought about that before when I've talked to them. And like, then why are you getting rid of them if they're so good? And I'm like, because I got to do something. And they're like, he's a problem tenant. I'm like, no, he's not a problem tenant. I literally just need the. But then after I had that person say it to me, I was like, That kind of makes sense. Like if I'm called, because I've had a few bad tenants,
Yeah.
and I've called their references, and now I don't know if their references were just like their friend that they gave me their phone number
Yeah,
for.
yeah, totally.
That's the other thing. Like there's no fact checking on it
Yeah.
really, or is it that the landlord's like, I don't want to deal with this person.
Yeah, totally. I've had the concern as well, which is why I try to get a few and usually rely on the employment one most because that's the easiest one to vet. Yeah, I mean, the challenge is you worry about someone being on there wrongly. Wrongly is maybe not like someone who's not getting a fair shake because maybe some personal conflict with the
Yes.
landlord or something like that.
So it's being labeled as some of this aspect is like partially illegal to do so and releasing the information. So I think the first thing off the top I was thinking about is kind of like, I don't think anyone's giving out personal financial information. I think they're just sharing their experience with that person. Again, I haven't been on the list, so I can't 100%
Yeah.
speak to it. But they did have some interviews with a few different legal aides and lawyers and things like that said you can't legally disclose this info.
Yeah, I think there's like a why. Like this person, this is their name, this is why they're not recommended as a tenant. And
Yeah.
I think that's probably the extent of the information, but that is presumably private information.
Yeah. Now, I know on the bottom, I should have brought one of my leases, but on the bottom we have a little disclaimer about taking their info, checking their credit and stuff like that. And so I think actually what they were saying is with that, technically you're covered and you can actually be able to kind of have some conversation with another landlord regarding what's been said because basically explicitly they know that their information is now given to you and you have the ability to utilize it kind of how you please, not in the sense of like anything, but you have the ability to disclose it to somebody else that's in the same industry for those kind of purposes. All this being said, some places like in the States, they have like the tenancy board has damage history records.
I think
So-
that's. Yeah, I don't understand how anyone can think that's not legitimate.
I think that's a great idea that you should be able to call up like, okay, like the Nova Scotia Tenancy Board, like realistically they are for the tenant right now. There really isn't much available for the landlord. Like, yes, they do have their systems in place, but we've all experienced them. They aren't necessarily the quickest to push through. And right now the sentiment is very much towards against the landlords. So if you had the ability to like, okay, so here's your steps. Like we do our credit checks, we do our whatever income verification. The last step is just a quick call or an online portal with a tenancy board. Type in the person's name, boom, there's their info, and they're clean on that. I mean, it's not a guarantee, but it doesn't hurt. And then if you do have an issue, you have the ability to submit it, and maybe they make it a process where, okay, as a landlord, you submit it. If they disagree, they can dispute it. Like you can upload landlord, you can upload the pictures and what happened, and then if they dispute it, then you can have a little bit of back and forth. If they don't dispute it, then it's on there and filed.
Yeah.
I think something like that definitely needs to happen because and I mean, it can go both ways. I understand that also landlords should probably be held accountable for some of the things that they do as well.
Yeah, like I as I've mentioned, I'm fine with the landlord registry.
Yeah.
Right? I think a great complement to that would be a tenant registry.
Yeah.
And this is why Uber is so great.
Yeah.
This is why Airbnb, like, why is the service so much better there?
Yeah.
Because it's like, I'm going to hold you accountable and you're going to hold me accountable.
Yep.
Right? And I think that is a good two-way street, so long as it is fair and impartial. And I think the concern would be, well, what if someone, gets on this list that isn't fact-checked, that isn't vetted, and it then, makes a problem of them trying to find a place that's hard as it is even worse.
Yeah.
So I think maybe the original intent of this list would have been to genuinely help other people. Like, if I had a horrible experience with someone, the last thing I would want is for someone else to have that same experience.
Yeah.
Right. So then it's easy to see how it would go from okay, this is me keeping, telling this to some other people that I know in the industry, like, hey, listen, I know you rent the building right down the street. This person just moved out. They did this. They're going to be looking for an apartment. They might apply to you. Just so you know, it was a bad experience. They trashed the place.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything bad or wrong about that. As soon as you turn it to a document and then you circulate it online, you're asking for trouble. And I'm not surprised that this became this issue. But I think, well, if we're saying let's formalize it and govern it and make it a real thing, why shouldn't people be held accountable if they trash a unit, right? Because I can tell you, the half a month security deposit isn't holding them accountable. The tenancy board is not holding them accountable, and really, I've got papers that have been issued to me from small claims court that say she owes you $5,000. And then I said to the judge, this is my first experience, I go, how do I get it? And he goes, good luck with that. That's what he said to me. He said, good luck with that.
Yeah, there's no chance.
Yeah, there's no chance. So you quickly learn, like, well, I have no recourse, so I'm just going to eat it, and this is going to be the cost of doing business, and, it sucks, and it hurts, but you roll with it because there is no accountability there. I think accountability on both sides would be great. I think of all these names on the list, it's got to be grossly out of date and probably not that much of
Relevant,
an exhaustive.
realistically.
Yeah.